How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Zim's Beer Review. I'm your host, Garrett Zimmer. Thanks for tuning in, however you may be tuning in, whether you're following on YouTube, on Twitch, or if you've downloaded the podcast, wherever podcasts are found. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome back. We're here with episode number 21. We have a brew, if you haven't seen by the title already, from a very large craft brewery, Sierra Nevada. And we are reviewing a beer that I've never had of theirs. Sierra Nevada, I'm sure if you are even moderately into craft beer, Sierra Nevada is one you've heard of. Extremely, extremely popular, very widely available, really big in the craft brew scene. But this is one that I had never tried before. We are trying the Hazy Little Thing IPA. Comes in a can. Most of Sierra Nevada's stuff actually comes in a bottle. So that's the first thing that I really noticed, as well as like the label and everything on this kind of looked different than what the rest of their beers labels look like. This one kind of looked a little bit different. So decided to give it a try. And I love IPAs, so really wanted to see what this one was all about. So without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and open this up. I wish we could use our cool bottle opener from Shaverwood, but we got a can, so we're just going to go ahead and pop this open. And one of the main things I really want to see on this is the clarity. So this is listed as a Hazy Little Thing IPA. I'm going to guess that's the unfiltered. Normally IPAs are filtered and clear, but not always. This is one that is not, given the name Hazy Little Thing. And you can see right away, this is definitely unfiltered. This is, it looks like a hef in the glass. Really, really cloudy look to it. If you don't know about the brewing process or anything, I recommend you go back and listen. I actually did a review of a home brew that I made myself, and I kind of used that episode as I guess a base point to start home brewing, to kind of just get people interested and kind of get like the basic knowledge of how home brewing works. So I would point you in that direction. But to recap part of that, every beer that you brew is going to be hazy. They all are going to turn out like this unless you do something to clarify them. You're not going to brew a beer that is clear on its own. They always come out cloudy, and you can do filtration processes. You can do different things in the brew kettle itself, or even into the fermentation process to clarify your beer, but they're always going to be hazy like this if you don't do anything. And so it's kind of like it's literally unfiltered beer. So that's what this is. I personally don't think it affects the flavor that much. I think a lot of the haziness and or clarity is totally, it's totally arbitrary. People generally are going to gravitate towards beers that look a little clearer, more clear, I should say, just because they think it's cleaner. It's going to taste better. I don't notice a huge difference between a filtered beer or a beer that has been clarified. I don't notice. So it's really total preference on what you think. This, upon looking on the can, this just is listed as an IPA. Nothing else to it. No flavor. We're dealing with just a straight unfiltered IPA, which is kind of cool. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a try. So let's give this a try. The smell on this is like, it smells fruity. A lot of IPAs will use a lot of hops, and hops have a floral scent to them sometimes, almost a fruity scent and taste that can translate to a beer. That this one does smell that way. I'm getting a lot of fruit, really sweet in smell. Taste wise, that's a really good IPA. Taste wise, I'm definitely getting fruit. I'm getting a lot of hop flavor, hop up front. That's the first thing I notice is the hops, which you would expect in an IPA. And that is what I'm getting. I'm also getting a little bit of like pine. Tastes like I don't want to say it tastes like a pine tree because that's gonna that's not gonna sound good, but it kind of does. It has a piney, earthy flavor to it, but it still has that sweetness that I can't describe in any other way as maybe like a fruit. It's not like a flower, although it kind of smells floral. But that's kind of what an IPA is. If you've had an unflavored, just a straight IPA, you know what I'm talking about. That's what this tastes like. It's like standard IPA, but it's done really well. I wouldn't expect anything less. Sierra Nevada makes really good beer. They've been doing it for a long time. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Sierra Nevada if you don't already know. But as far as this beer, the Hazy Little Thing IPA from Sierra Nevada, I thoroughly enjoy this beer. This is a really good drinking IPA. I don't know the alcohol content offhand. I lost it. This is 6.7% alcohol. Actually on the higher side. I would not have guessed that from the flavor, which means they hide it pretty well. I think this is a really good IPA, really well done, really well-rounded, has really good flavor. It has the hoppy characteristic if you like that. And if you're buying a beer that says IPA on the front, I would hope you do like that. If you like IPAs, I would point you in the direction of this one. I could drink multiple of these throughout the night. It is not heavy. It is not overwhelming. And it doesn't have such a off-the-wall flavor to it that you'd get tired of. I have reviewed some beers on this channel that'll have I'm trying to think offhand. I review beers and then I drink beers on the weekends and I get them all mixed up. But take, for example, an IPA or any type of a pale ale or anything that's going to have like a fruit, not just a fruit taste to it, but it's actually labeled as that, such as take, for example, like a Shock Top raspberry wheat, for example. Really good wheat beer. It does taste like raspberries. And the first couple drinks, you're like, oh my God, this is really tasty. But as you drink it, you drink one, you start on your second one, and you're like, okay, this flavor, this raspberry flavor is getting a little old. I'm kind of over it. It's a little too in your face. And you're not able to drink, 3 or 4 of them when you're hanging out with your friends. This beer, on the other hand, is really light. It has really good hop flavor and IPA flavor, but it doesn't have something so outrageous that you're going to be like, oh man, I'm kind of tired of it. It's a really, really good IPA. I was not sure what to expect because it did not have a flavor. This is a really well done IPA. So as usual, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys know a little bit more about Sierra Nevada. Sierra Nevada Brewing, despite the name, is from California. They started in Chico, California in 1979, which makes them one of the older craft breweries. Not the oldest, but they are known as one of the pioneering companies of the craft brew scene. The craft brew scene really blew up in the 80s, and people were really, the small town, 1 or 2 guy shops that decided to make beer, that was their heyday. Starting in the late 70s, going into the 80s. I feel like it almost had a bit of a lull in the 90s. And then beyond that, up until today, it's taken off again. Craft brew is like, it's the hipster thing to do, is to have a craft brew. You want to go down and have 50 craft brews on tap somewhere, and it's back. But they started, don't want to say started it, but they were on the forefront of the craft brew scene in the late 70s, early 80s. Started with 2 guys. Both of them were named Steve, coincidentally. One of them was the head of marketing, and one of them was the head brewmaster. And it just started like that. They actually grew pretty quickly. They sold over 1,000 barrels of beer within their first 2 years. I want to say they sold over 500 barrels their first year in production, and they doubled that the next year, which is kind of crazy. For just 2 guys to do that, that's a lot of production, and that's a lot of growth really quickly. So they started in 79. By 1987, they already had distribution into 7 states, and they opened up a new brewery, which if you've been following the podcast, there's been other breweries that it took 20 years to really get going and to get recognition and start to get that distribution. They had it realistically within 7 years. They already were in 7 different states. Then at that time, they opened up their first tap room / restaurant in the 80s. Things were really taking off for Sierra Nevada at that time. One of the original Steves, who started it, retired and sold his shares in 1998. So he was in it for about 20 years. He sold his stuff to the other Steve. And then we'll skip ahead a little bit just to give you an idea of how big Sierra Nevada was and is continuing to be. In 2011, according to their website here, in 2011, they had 450 employees. So it's 2018 now. 7 years ago, they had 450. Today, they have over 1,000. They have doubled in the last 7 years. And they were big 7 years ago. So that just kind of shows you how this craft brew scene has really taken off. And one thing that I do think is pretty awesome about Sierra Nevada, they are owned by them, like they're family owned and operated. They were not bought or sold to, say, Anheuser-Busch, like some other breweries have been. I've given my opinion on that. I think it's good for the brewery when they need it, but I have to give respect to breweries that can do it on their own. And they are one of the ones who have done it on their own. So in 2014, they opened up their second brewing facility. Surprised me, actually, by that. I thought they would have had a second brewing facility prior to 2014, given the size that they were, but I guess their first brewing facility was just that productive that they didn't need it. But so they're from Chico, California. They opened up their second brewery in North Carolina, so to really cover it. Little side note with that second brewery they opened in North Carolina. For those of you who don't know, I'm a civil engineer. I think buildings and roads and bridges are really cool. And one thing that, if you're a civil engineer or know anything about the new upcoming, we'll say green / sustainability movement that we have right now, there's a thing called LEED, LEED. And you can get a LEED certification on a building or a home. So LEED, LEED, stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. And LEED will certify buildings. I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but I think it's super cool, so maybe you will too. So LEED will certify buildings who have made not just an effort, but have successfully made their building, built it with sustainability and the environment in mind during construction. So the LEED certification scale has 100 points to give. So if you are over, they have all different, they have LEED, I think bronze, silver, gold, platinum. They have a couple other different certifications in there too. Those are the main ones. Obviously platinum is the best. If you have over 80 points, your building is LEED platinum certified. That is not impossible to get, but it is not just handed out. I think there might be just over 1,000 LEED certified buildings in the United States, which may sound like a lot, but 1,000 buildings really is not that many. When you consider how many of these LEED buildings there are, I don't have that total number of LEED certified buildings for comparison. I don't know that offhand. Excuse me. But so they'll give you'll get points towards that certification based on whether the materials you used were renewable or if they were recycled or reclaimed. If you used reclaimed wood as your paneling on the inside, or if you have, X number of windows to let in natural light, if you harvest your rainwater on site and use it for watering your garden, if you have solar panels to power the lights, and some of these buildings are completely self-sustained. Don't think their brewery is. That would be pretty difficult, but Sierra Nevada's brewery is one of the LEED Platinum certified buildings. So I think that's pretty cool. To go along with that, they were named Green Business of the Year a couple years back. So they're highly productive. They're making a lot of beer. They make really good beer, but yet they're doing it with the environment in mind. And I think that's kind of a cool outlook to do, especially from a family-owned and operated business. I think that's something really cool. So that kind of gives you a little bit of background on Sierra Nevada. I think they have over 20 beers available year-round. They are available, I believe, in every state. There's a distributor in every state for Sierra Nevada. So if you want to find a Sierra Nevada beer, I almost can guarantee you could go down to your local liquor store and find one. If you go to their website, which will be in the description of this podcast and video, it is sierranevada.com. You can find where your local distributors are, and you can actually put in your address or your zip code, and it will tell you the closest liquor store to you that sells their beer. Super cool. I highly recommend their beers. They're one of the like I said, one of the largest craft breweries in the nation right now. They're doing things the right way, and they're making really good beer. So can't say enough good things about Sierra Nevada. I highly recommend this hazy little thing IPA. If you're into IPAs, give it a try. And as always, thank you. And if you want to follow, you can follow me on Twitter at Zim's Beer Review. I'm also on Instagram now. If you want to follow on Instagram, those links will also be in the description of this video. So feel free to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for taking the time out of your day. And until next time, happy drinking.